What's going on, everybody? Mark Conway with the Midwest Horror Network. Thank you so much for clicking on this link for the Nightmares podcast. If you do want to hear just the audio version of this podcast, click the Spotify link below.
Welcome, everyone, to the Nightmares podcast, where we talk about everything horror, movies, TV shows, video games, comics, music, anything horror-related. We'll talk about it. I'm Brandon, and with me, as always, are...
Zach.
Mark.
All right, so...
I'm hungry.
I'm tired.
Mark's Italian.
Which, we had a very eventful weekend this week. We went and did some equipment tests and rehearsals for an upcoming production. Everything went well, but of course we are completely wiped out. Just completely drained of energy. So
I'm just hungry.
we did what we always do in situations like this. We watched a movie and we're going to talk about it. This time we chose a movie that Zach and I have seen. I've seen it multiple times. Zach, you've seen it.
4.
This is your 4th time? Mm-hmm. All right. And so this was Mark's first time, so we're going to get his thoughts about it. But first, Zach, introduce what we watched today.
Mandy!
Mandy starring Nicolas Cage.
And Nicolas Caging all over Nicolas Cage. This was definitely an opportunity for him to shine. And actually, there's a little bit of similarities between the level of insanity from the other movie that Brandon and I saw, which was, I forgot the name.
Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space.
Yep.
There's some
Which
similar.
was also produced by Spectre Vision, Elijah Wood's production company.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because I could see a lot of similarities from this. So, and Nicolas Cage actually being Nicolas Cage made a lot more sense to me in this movie than it did in that movie. But I still need to see that again by your recommendation.
I agree with that statement, but I will say Color Out of Space is better on repeat viewings. It's not the performance, like if I had directed it, that's not the kind of performance I would have wanted out of the character, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different than how I would have made it.
Fair enough. So Mandy is a really, really good revenge story. I actually joked with Zach a little bit. I was like, oh, so this is basically The Crow, except he doesn't die.
Not wrong.
Which is not a bad thing at all.
No,
It's
the
not a bad,
first Crow movie is fucking amazing.
I was okay on it.
You okay on The Crow?
Yeah,
Really?
and I only
Just
ever
okay?
saw it once though, so I do. It is one of those movies that I need to see it again because I only saw it once. I saw it a long while back.
I think
What year was The Crow?
94.
94.
Yeah. Oh, my birthday year.
Same director as iRobot, which I was also just okay on.
I really did enjoy
And
iRobot.
another Nicolas Cage movie called Knowing, which I was just okay on.
I'm gonna agree with that one. I was okay on that one. It was a
He
good
also
movie.
did Gods of Egypt,
Never saw that
which
one.
nobody liked or saw.
I'm gonna go with nobody saw because there was a bunch of people who were pissed off about it.
Yeah.
So I want to see it one day, and I'm gonna make Ray watch it with me because he hates it. So it'll just be funny to just watch him go.
I also heard it had some of the worst CGI effects in the last 10 years. But he also...
I'll be the judge of that. Thank you.
But in 1998, he also directed a movie called Dark City, which is actually pretty darn phenomenal.
I've heard of it, never saw it.
Never even heard of it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely check that out. I'll check that out, but you got to check out The Crow.
Okay.
Deal? Cool.
And I have it here somewhere. I just haven't watched it since that first time I got it.
Nice.
So.
That would be a fantastic screaming room. Anyway, so this movie is essentially a revenge story. It is definitely a indie style horror in the best possible way.
This is what every A24 movie wants to be.
Yep.
And probably should be.
Good, unique, artsy, and, good. But they always miss the good mark.
Which we did talk about that just like on our own off of the podcast. Maybe it was like a week, 2 weeks ago, where Mark posed the question to Zach, if A24 is that type of movie done bad, who does it good? And you mentioned Mandy, and I kind of thought about the movies that Spectre Vision does, and I would say Spectre Vision is kind of, I would call them the good A24, looking at what they do.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Color Out of Space. Like, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, It looks interesting, but I'm not like excited or just like I want to go out to see it. Mandy, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, I need to fucking see this. And holy shit, was that a great movie experience. Like I love watching it, but seeing that movie in the theater was just something else. Like beautiful. I fucking loved every moment of it. Walked out of that theater with the biggest smile on my face. It was my favorite movie of 2018. God damn, just beautiful.
It's nice to hear Zach actually be passionate about something for a change. And not be meh. Anyway, I will say this though, right off the top of the bat, this is a gorgeous movie. Visually, it is a gorgeous movie.
Agreed.
Uses every bit of color you can possibly imagine. It is a masterpiece in lighting, coloring, just overall fantastic framing. It's definitely an acid trip, to say the least. I mean, a lot of this stuff is very metaphoric and
It's very prog rocky in a way.
sure.
Like if prog rock were a movie and not music,
I still don't understand prog rock, what that is.
We'll explain it to you later.
Rush, yes.
It's very kind of trippy.
I see more metal in this than I do prog rock.
I see both actually.
I'm definitely down with both. So essentially the plot is that Nicolas Cage is a woodcutter in the
You mean a lumberjack?
Lumberjack, woodsman,
woodsman, DLD, but woodcutter. Well, that's technically what they are. I'm assuming the Pacific Northwest, because that's where most of it happens, or in Canada somewhere. This movie takes place in 1983. You actually hear a radio excerpt from Ronald Reagan that was like really early in his presidential term. And he has a girlfriend who is an avid reader and
Fantasy novels.
indeed. She's also a fan of Motley Crue. She had a really awesome Motley Crue, and that's early Motley Crue. Like I think that's actually 1983 was Too Fast for Love. I think it might have been before Shout at the Devil, because that was like right at that thing. And then that was at.
Is that why Justin likes this movie?
I'd imagine it's one of the things that made him go early on in the movie, okay, I'm on board. Which it's when I showed it to him, he actually had the idea of we each choose 10 movies from our collection that the other one hadn't seen.
This was that time.
And we would kind of pair them together on which ones would make the best double features. So it'd be like we do 10 double features. One movie from my collection that he'd never seen, and one from his collection that I'd never seen. And one of the ones I picked was Mandy, and one of the ones he picked was Drive Angry. So it was just kind of natural that we paired those two up.
Drive Angry is another fantastic movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
I'll definitely be checking it out. I've always loved Nicolas Cage. I've been a big fan of Nicolas Cage for a long time. I think the first movie of his I ever saw was either Face Off or The Rock. Both are great movies.
For me, I think it was Gone in 60 Seconds.
That makes sense. And actually, if it was Gone in 60 Seconds, was probably very, very short after that.
Yeah.
After seeing those two movies,
Yeah.
I just remember being like a younger kid, and my dad introducing me to all those like rated R movies that you can kind of still show a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old.
Like I said, my family didn't care. Yeah, there was Gone in 60 Seconds, Con Air. Those are the two biggest ones that I remember from the early days.
I happen to think that The Rock and Face Off are better movies than Con Air.
Look, I love Con Air, but I do not remember much from The Rock. I know I've seen it. I just barely fucking remember it. But Face Off, great movie.
Oh yeah,
love that.
Yeah, that's a hell of a pair to have John Travolta and Nicolas Cage both in the same thing.
Agreed.
And then switching characters.
My first Nicolas Cage movie was Honeymoon in Vegas.
Wow.
Don't think I've ever even heard of that one.
My dad met him when he was filming that.
Oh wow.
They
Holy shit.
ended up playing dice with him in Vegas.
Really?
Back in the early 80s.
And then Matt Stickman is probably the first movie where I was aware of who Nicolas Cage was.
Match Stickmen and Lord of War are two movies my buddy has been trying to get me to see for fucking years now, and I've just been too lazy to do it.
I have the DVD of Match Stickman if you want to watch it.
Match Stickman is a great character piece, and it's Nicolas Cage is showing some really great acting talents, and that is actually the first movie I ever saw Sam Rockwell in.
Mine was Galaxy Quest.
I just saw Galaxy Quest just after that. I saw Matchstick Men. Absolutely.
Do you know who directed Matchstick Men?
No, I don't remember.
Ridley Scott.
That is great.
It is like the most random. This is so not his type of movie at all.
But I can tell though. Now that you
Yeah.
said that, I can tell. I can tell. Whatever beef you have, it probably has to do with Alien.
You don't say.
Yeah. It always has to do with like one of 5 movies.
Though I would argue The Counselor was worse than Alien Covenant.
Yeah, but nobody saw that.
I did.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so am I. Anyway, so let's get off of Ridley Scott and back to Nicolas Cage and
Back to somebody with actual talent, thank you.
and this movie. So he is his girlfriend and him are just having a normal life, living their thing. While this is all going on, there is a religious cult of some kind running amok. Did I miss something?
I don't know if I would call them a religious cult.
I would call them more religious fanatics.
Because it was more like it was like a hippie commune run by this one guy.
But
I guess there were some religious aspects to it, but it's not like a religious cult like you would think from. It's not
Drive
like
Drive Angry. It's clearly a cult.
Yeah, it's not like the
This
Heaven's Gate people. It's more like
These are just his
this-
few followers
this-
who he's been
yeah.
able to
this felt like Charles Manson.
it's closer to that.
Except with a lot more religious undertones, especially when he was showing the album, and I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of Charles Manson and Brian Wilson shit going on right now. Some uncomfortably
It's close to cult, but it's not quite there.
And it was just really interesting to watch these people because they seem so like a decade out of place.
Yeah.
Like the Manson murders took place in 69 and 70, and this was in 83. And I'm like, this is almost like they're just 10 to 12 years off.
Yeah, but it was like the one main like super pretentious guy and his cronies who have no real lives of their own, so they'll follow him.
Yeah, essentially.
And they're
losers.
And that's a cult. They
Crazy, violent losers.
That's a cult. Like as much research that I did, especially for clowns, about cults, like that's the crazy part about like the cult leaders. It's all about like power and manipulating people, And most of the time, or in the words of Ralphie May, it's all about just banging the underage or very young chicks.
Because when he did bring out the record, like Mandy asked him, "You made this song," and it's like he has his followers who are probably just like, "This is art, man." And then you have Mandy just laughing her face off at him.
Either laughing her face at the music or his small penis. I don't know.
Both.
Which,
I was gonna say
it
both.
is totally both. Or just how pretentious the guy is. Like it was like somebody.
Painful.
It was like he was so infatuated with this woman, and just everything that he builds himself on, she just openly mocks, and it was great.
Which is actually kind of interesting because I'm probably gonna read way too deep into this, but that's actually a huge difference between the 60s and and early 70s from the early 80s to the late 80s. This is a difference in cultural appreciation or cultural understanding. Like back in that Charles Manson days, it was all about the center of the universe and and like coming together and like peace and love, and like the center is where you need to be. And by the time you got to the 80s and like Reaganomics and shit like that, where people were just worried about like success, that was ridiculous. Like that sounded ludicrous and stupid, and like her reaction is as such.
Well, that's another thing. You also got to look at how many people follow him. It's only a handful of people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's why, it makes sense.
But the funny thing is, like, had it been like
Our small
11
independent
years,
film crews are bigger than that guy's cult.
yeah.
pretty much, it just seems like if it was like 11 years ago, like this dude would have been the shit.
Probably.
Like he would have been like the thing. the way he thinks he is, he would have been. But like, it's so funny to watch this dude who's like clearly a hippie talking to a girl who's wearing a Motley Crue shirt, which is like the essence of glam rock and like the 80s and like decadence and all that stuff and money. And like, he's all about like, the center of the universe and drugs and acid. I'm like, dude, you are way the fuck behind, bro. Like, you were
like 10 to 15 years too late.
Yes, and then some, and then some. So,
Dude, when he sees her, she's wearing a Black Sabbath shirt.
and then and then she's also wearing a Black Sabbath shirt. I'm like, yeah, dude, it ain't happening, bro.
Wrong time, wrong place, man.
Wrong time.
Yeah.
So the plot progresses. Essentially, this cult, fanatical people, whatever you want to call them, are coming into town. The cult leader happens to see her on the side of the road, and he decides, I want her. And then his creepy old former lover, I guess, comes into the shop that she works in and kind of, I guess, feels her out and tries to figure out, I think she's just doing some groundwork to find out how many people she actually lives with. So how hard is it going to be to take her out?
Also where she lives.
Exactly.
And Mandy was dumb enough to tell her.
Pretty much. So we found out.
It was a much more trusting time.
Indeed it was.
Fair enough.
Nowadays
you just lie and be like, oh yeah, I live in the city.
And you come to work here every day? Yes.
People do that.
And then obviously the most interesting part comes in when you figure out that this cult is being backed by, I don't know what they are. Like it's literally like Hellraiser meets Sons of Anarchy.
It is. It's essentially what it is.
Type of deal. Like they're backed by this kind of muscle that is some.
They're an old biker gang that used to run drugs.
Okay.
But they took they got their hands on some of this concoction of LSD that just completely fucked their minds up.
So they now drink blood or drink whatever.
Blood, that version of LSD, and love pain. Like it's you're right. It's Cenobites meets Sons of Anarchy.
Yep.
That is the perfect description for these types of people.
Except they don't talk as much as Cenobites. They talk a little bit less.
Yeah.
I guess, and then also they require some type of sacrifice before they do any kind of bidding for this cult leader.
Well, they do like blood.
So they ended up sacrificing one of their cult members to grab this girl.
The fat kid.
The fat guy, fatty. So, and then also, by the way, just as a spoiler warning, if you have not seen Mandy, please stop listening right now. Go watch Mandy. Then come right back, because I am going to spoil this for the intended purpose of us being able to openly talk about this plot. So, you've been warned. Cool. They end up finding Mandy. They go through what we just talked about. She laughs her ass off at the cult leader. Cult leader don't like that, so they put her in a burlap.
Which they drugged her up before.
True.
Yeah. How about that giant hornet thing?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that was.
They kept it in liquid, and then they had it stinger. I don't know how the fuck that thing was still alive in there, by the way. That thing was submerged.
And they also put some, they Clockwork Oranged her without the tape, and they put the droppers in her eyes, which, I mean, that may be drugs. I don't know.
It's probably drugs.
I think I read somewhere that was supposed to be liquid LSD.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
That makes sense.
I mean, you could take drugs through your eyes. I've heard and seen shit like that before. So.
Oh, absolutely. So they go ahead and drug her. She meets the cult leader, laughs at the cult leader's music and small penis.
Tiny penis.
Which the cult leader was played by the actor who played Thomas Wayne in Batman Begins.
Which
I find that really random.
That is really interesting because I could hear his voice and I'm like, you're actually a pretty good actor. I'm surprised that you're not as well known, or you don't have as much work.
He's done a lot of TV show stuff. Like I saw Law and Order and shit like that. So he's kind of one of those actors. But I'm like, this is probably his biggest role, at least from what I can tell.
And if that's not a wig, then he has amazingly perfect hair, because his hair is perfect.
Especially for that time.
Oh, 100%. So anyway, the cult leader didn't like that, so they put her into a burlap sack, and they go ahead and light her on fire. With Nicolas Cage being chained up, and while he gets to watch.
No, not chained up, barbed wired up.
Yeah, which is I imagine is deeply uncomfortable.
You have your mouth gagged by barbed wire and your hands locked by barbed wire. Tell me how comfortable you are.
Good point. So, something interesting that they don't ever say out loud, but it's very clear that Nicolas Cage's character is a former alcoholic, because he completely avoids booze when he at the very beginning when he's getting shipped back from cutting down everything. One of his coworkers offers him a beer, and then he says no. And then also finally, when he awakes after his girlfriend has been murdered, he eventually gets to the bathroom, which is the most well lit place in the entire movie. You can see everything, and he goes to a little armoire with a drawer, and then finds a bottle of vodka that's been hidden. And then goes ahead and goes to town, and then
literally downs the whole thing.
And then gets Nicolas Cage all over the Nicolas Cage. But I will tell you this though, completely appropriate.
Oh yeah,
completely appropriate. Very, very good for what the scene needed to be. Every problem I had with
Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space, I liked in this movie. When he had his moments in Color of Space, I didn't care for it because the moment wasn't right. But in this one,
that wasn't every moment. Like the car freak out in Color Out of Space was very effective.
It was very effective. I just happen to think that this was even more effective.
I agree.
Because I wasn't really laughing. Like I was I like snickered at one point, but like for the most part, like I was in it with him. Because I felt it. And he was. It was a person coming out of shock, and just dealing with all the things that he just saw, and it was a great opportunity for Nicolas Cage to be Nicolas Cage. Eventually he gets his shit together, and he decides that of course revenge is the best option, which I do not blame him. So he goes ahead and tries to hunt down his crossbow that was left by one of the actors from The Predator.
Duke.
Yep.
Will Duke from The Predator, which was very nice to see him. And Will Duke gives a little bit of exposition to explain the evil Cenobite / SOA.
Yep.
The bikers.
The bikers, pretty much. The demon bikers.
Again, that's exactly what they are.
Yep. A little bit of explanation about what they are, why they are the way that they are, and then he goes after them.
Well, before that, after he picks up his crossbow, Bill Duke gives him 2 crossbow bolts that he made himself, and he can have them on the condition that he puts them to good use. And then Nicolas Cage makes an axe.
Forgot about that.
Forges an axe, I should say.
One of the most badass forgery scenes in history. That was so awesome to watch in the theater.
Yeah.
Beautiful with the sound mix and everything.
Which, when I was in Los Angeles last year during the ASC Masterclass, I think it was after Wednesday was finished. It was either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Wednesday. It doesn't really matter what day, but after one of the days, it was one of the girls' birthday. And so she invited everybody from the class to go to like the Star Wars cantina. And it ended up just being her, me, and one of the other students. And we went there. And I was like admiring all the different deck because I thought it was just going to be Star Wars stuff. But no, they have...
Oh, they have a lot of stuff there. It's a beautiful place.
They have everything. And I just happened to look above the bar, and it's like in the shadows, like it was just like, it just kind of caught the corner of my eye. They had the axe and the cheddar goblin. And I was the only one at our table that knew what those things were.
The cheddar goblin was a ridiculous 80s commercial that was playing at one point about that had to do with the cheddar goblin was a company that made macaroni and cheese and had some goblin running around literally throwing up macaroni and cheese while children ate it. Dude, it is like it's the '80s version of that YouTube video about the '90s,
yeah.
the '90s kids versions, except
It's
not,
hilarious.
except not as grotesque.
Not something I put on my wall. The axe, absolutely. I would love to build that thing and mount it somewhere, and maybe even use it one day. But yeah,
The Goblin is a very specific reference.
yeah, that's one of the few places I would love to go back and visit in LA because that place was fucking awesome.
Nice. So after Nicolas Cage goes ahead and forges his weapon, he goes after the first biker, which proves to be a harder task than I'm sure he realized.
Oh yeah, and after he forges the axe, we finally get the title of the movie, an hour and 15 minutes in.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Well, I guess they. I mean,
Like I said, the movie has a very slow start,
better late than never, I suppose.
but it pays off.
Nicolas Cage ends up tracking the biker gang down and shoots his crossbow to trip up one of the bikers, and then runs his car into it. And I guess this dude is so strong that the car flips over and then lands, and then he gets captured by the rest of the gang. And next to a pit of death, because no villain is complete, as Zach said, without a pit of death. Which my immediate response was, it's just too expensive to be a villain these days.
These days, yeah.
The
The 80s were a much different time.
Back then you could pay off contractors. Now they're too expensive. Do you want to build a pit? Well, why do you want to build a pit?
You got unions.
It's
It's a
and
fucking
stuff
mess.
like that. You can only bribe and kill so many people.
Exactly.
And everybody's got a separate job now. So you got a guy to build the pit. You got a guy to pour the cement to keep the pit in line. You got a guy to put any kind of lighting down in case you got to go down there to retrieve the bodies. Or if you want to, put some lye down there and have some type of system where it just flushes out naturally. You got to put down a system. Then you're going to call a union plumber. They're going to have an electrician down there. It's a mess.
It's a mess.
It's
Just fuck it.
An absolute mess. A lot easier to just be, a villain in the 80s. Anyway, so Nicolas Cage is tied up. He has been crucified on his left-hand side, literally nailed into the ground. His hand, and then the other hand is handcuffed on a pipe, and he has a little bit of a negotiation with the first guy. He loosens up a pipe and smashes him up, which is pretty great. And then he decides to go up into the house where one of the bikers is doing coke and watching some good old-fashioned early 80s porn with literally like the same scene just recut in different places. It's literally the same scene.
Yep. It's on repeat, because why not?
I mean, well, yeah, why not? Like the dude who's doing the blow is gonna know. Anyway, so Nick tries to sneak up on him, and then he sees in his reflection, and then it gets to jump on him. Then they end up getting a little fight, which is pretty cool. I think he takes out one more person after that.
There's some biker with a shotgun that comes in, and he fucks him up too.
And then Nicolas Cage gets a little bit of blow to get him supercharged, and then he finds the acid that these bikers have been on. And
LSD.
The LSD. LSD acid.
It's the same thing.
It's yeah.
Or so I hear.
Anyway. So Nicolas Cage does a little bit of acid, which I'm sure Nicolas Cage has done many times in his own life.
You don't say.
The little bit of coke, a little bit of acid. How they say like this acid's so good, I feel like my face is melting off. This is face melting acid. It literally does that in his imagination. His face melts, and then he sees what the biker sees, and then he kills the rest of the gang, which is pretty cool. Then it's off to the cult members. It's
such a fun goddamn movie, and it looks so beautiful. And then it also has one of the best soundtracks in a movie I've heard in a very long time.
It had a pretty good ending. It had a very nice metaphorical ending. Just getting the revenge, and and it's almost justice. And that cult leader was nuts.
Yeah.
Like and I kind of glad that he didn't die the way he was behaving right before as a total weenie, because I'm like, oh, I've seen that before with these type of cult members, and I'm kind of glad he just died with his other side of his personality. Oh, the ruthless one.
Well, I mean, most people like that are fucking cowards.
Well, it's true. And this dude was clearly had some type of split personality that made him believe that he was talking to God, or talking to some type of higher power. But
Yeah, it's called drugs.
yeah, that's true too. But yeah, and then him burning down the whole place. And then, oh, by the way, totally tossing her head to the cult member, the older lady.
I just wish we would have saw him decapitate the bitch.
I was like, oh, I've seen this a dozen times. He totally capped it in the woods, sir. Mm-hmm. That's pretty great. That's pretty great. And then also the I loved the lighting in the whole movie, but I loved it even more the more the movie went on. Especially the last part with with the strobe light effect. It's not really a strobe light; it's a slower version of a strobe light.
Yeah.
But yeah, great.
Some of the color in this movie. Like there are scenes where they had like 3 or 4 different filters just stacked in front of the lens. Which, I mean, some of those filters really eat up the light, so they had to have been blasting light on that set.
Oh yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Especially during those night scenes. Jesus Christ.
They use like red filters, chocolate filters, tobacco filters. I think there are a few others that aren't coming to mind right now.
There's a few greens in there too that I'm like, Jesus Christ.
But yeah, shortly after seeing the movie, I actually bought a red filter and gave Zach his own sort of Mandy-ish headshot. It was his Facebook profile picture for a good while.
Still
That's
is.
right.
I
That's right.
switched
It's
it back
still
a while
Yeah.
back and I haven't changed it.
There was one shot that I just loved, and it was so simple, and I think a lot of people will forget it, but it's one of the moments when he's driving away in his pickup truck, driving somewhere, and it's on a 1-lane road with 2 forests on each side, and they accentuate the red from the back tail lights. So as it's driving forward, the red pops on the green trees as his backlights touch them, and it's just a really, really, really cool effect that I loved. And how he's in red on the front, and then the red shoots out the back of the pickup truck on the lights as it goes forward. It was super fucking cool. In a movie that has amazing shots and amazing lighting, this is one of those ones that it's gonna stick in my head. It's very simple, but it was really effective.
Yeah. And seeing it on the big screen was pretty cool too. Zach and I saw it with Wes at the Music Box. It was the only bad thing. Well, the only 2 bad things were, one, it was in the small theater. It was in their second theater.
Which I don't know why the hell they made that decision, but whatever.
And I'm sure if they were to do a midnight screening now, they could probably easily sell it out in the big theater. And we also had like one audience member in there that was just going a little too far with her enthusiasm, where it was really starting to bug me and Wes.
It bugged you and Wes way more than it bugged me. I was fine, but I was more annoyed about like, oh God, Wes, don't freak the fuck out. That was my big concern. I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah, but overall, it was a very fun screening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am kind of jealous that I didn't get to see this. I mean, of course, Brendan, your screen is fantastic, but I would have loved to have seen it on a big screen just to see the colors really, really pop with this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken Technicolor to the nth degree of extreme. If you want to make an indie movie, a cult movie, something like this is how you do it. This is a masterclass in that.
Yeah, you actually have a story and you make it entertaining.
And by the way, it doesn't have to be an overly complicated story, because this is not a overly complicated story. It's pretty
as straightforward as you can get.
correct.
But again, there's a story.
correct.
There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. There's something there. Something actually happens.
But this is true.
What happens in an 824 movie? We're going to let the scene draw out while this song plays because it really speaks to me, Yes.
Zach, we're still in business hours. You know the rules.
It's past 8 o'clock. We're past business hours, Mark.
I'm adjusting the business hours.
You
anyway,
can't do that.
when you're a business owner, every hour is a business hour.
This is not true.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is. You signed the paperwork.
So did you. Therefore, it's not.
Anyway, yeah, this is a really good movie, and everybody's performance was great. It was a lot of it was exactly what it needed to be. The guy who played the co-leader was great. Mandy was great for what she was. Obviously, she wasn't in as much of the movie, but the scenes that she was in was very
First half of the movie was Mandy. Second half of the movie was Nicolas Cage.
100%. And Nick Cage was great. For this is the type of role that
he was born to play.
I don't want to say born to play because there's plenty of other roles he's done. This is a perfect casting. He's built for this type of role. And this is kind of where Nicolas Cage should be. He does fine in mainstream work, and there's plenty of mainstream movies that I love him in. But I think that I don't know the guy personally, but I think he feels more comfortable in this world, and therefore, when he feels more comfortable, he's in a better position to give a better performance.
Fair enough.
That might be a gross generalization, and I might be completely off, but it kind of feels like that. But yeah, I would definitely, if you're a fan of any kind of indie movie, cult movie, horror movie, revenge story, if you're a fan of Nicolas Cage, I highly recommend this movie. It was a lot of fun, and it was stunning looking movie, absolutely stunning.
Yes,
It was good. It's earlier during like the whole shelter in place thing this year, I went back and did some Instagram posts for my top 10 movies of each year from 2010 to 2019, and I did put Mandy at the top for 2018.
Oh, okay.
Picks. So I really liked it. It was my favorite movie of that year.
same here.
Yeah, I really like it.
Really wanted to get that special edition that was only sold in Germany.
Yeah.
The one with the LP and everything like that. I was like, oh my God, but that thing just... It's going on like $200 on eBay right now. And every time I tried getting it when it came out, it was like I just kept getting outbid because people are pricks.
I kind of felt the same way about how France got a super deluxe edition of The Hateful Eight when that came out on Blu-ray.
It's like, why there? Why not here? You don't think it'll sell? Like, I just don't understand it.
Who knows?
I mean, what was Mandy's actual box office? Because it's definitely not a mainstream movie. Like this isn't.
No, sadly.
This is not what the masses are flocking to.
But I mean, hey, that version, that collector's edition, sold. So I do think it would have sold. Hell, I would have bought it. But because they didn't sell it here, it was a huge pain in the ass.
Well, that sucks. It was only a 1.4 million box office on a budget.
On a $6 million budget, domestic was 1.2 million, and worldwide was 1.5.
That sucks.
So it didn't even make its money back.
Nope, not really.
That's a goddamn shame.
And actually, the funny thing is, if you look at the actual reviews for the movie, even the critics actually liked it a lot. There's 91% at Rotten Tomatoes.
Here's the thing. I think one of the reasons it didn't make that much money is because it was only in very, very select theaters. What was the reason they didn't get a wide theater release?
I'm going to guess it's just because, it was produced by Spectre Vision, a lot of other smaller places, so they probably just didn't have a big distributor for it.
Yeah, I just, because it's like you got Elijah Wood's production company.
Which they are not big.
It still has the name Elijah Wood behind it.
It has his name, but they
and then
are
you
not
also
big.
have Nicolas Cage's name behind it.
That's
a combination that's not a bad combination, and you would think.
No, but I mean, if you don't have the big distributor that can get it to the bigger theaters, it doesn't matter who you have. It's if you're just not big. If you don't have a big distributor behind you, you're not going to get that wide of a release.
And unfortunately,
and there's also marketing budgets and
correct.
All that good stuff.
And also on top of it, Nicolas Cage's weight, unfortunately nowadays doesn't hold as much as it did in the 90s.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of like bad flops. So it just doesn't quite. I mean, it holds weight, but it doesn't hold the weight that it used to hold. Especially if it's somebody, just Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage is known for doing, like lower indie movies that are sometimes just straight to DVD.
Most regular people, I'd think, have the impression that Nicolas Cage will literally do anything. So it's like, okay, is this Nicolas Cage in a good movie, or is this just Nicolas Cage in another movie?
Yeah, and I get that, and I totally get that. But but sometimes you miss some good gems like this one. So, you want to do final thoughts?
I feel like we kind of just did.
Yeah.
Cool. Brandon, sign us out.
All right. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Nightmares Podcast. You can listen to all of our previous episodes wherever podcasts are available. Also be sure to look us up at Midwest Horror Network on all of our social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and
Slasher.
And of course, if you are on if you are on YouTube watching this, go ahead and smash that like button and stab the subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And if you're checking us out on Spotify, go ahead and press that follow button. And also, if you're on YouTube, one more favor, click that little ding bell so you can be notified every time we drop content on the Midwest Horror Network. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Nightmares Podcast.